Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, and fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We were born to make manifest the glory of God within us. It is not just in some of us. It is in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. When Marianne Williamson spoke about this in her book, A Return to Love, she was talking about that which is in each of us that is perfect. We forget that, however, when we enter into relationships. We start compromising ourselves and we expect others to compromise themselves. It is only a person who is very strong in their belief in themselves, who have gone beyond the boundaries of what society believes to be right within relationships, who can stand as a strong person and be themselves, learning their lessons in truth and honor, in spite of what others expect of them. Whenever we deal in relationships which are based on fear or ego, we will find the victim triangle forming the basis for the relationship. As long as we have nothing to fear from anything or anyone, we are not victims. As long as we do not need to do anything for acceptance or recognition, we will not risk becoming rescuers. And as long as we do not need power over others in order to justify our own existence, we will not be seen as villains. Let us look at the three roles being played in this triangle. The villain is normally the person who will try and yield power over others by creating fear in them. He or she benefits from the powerlessness from which others choose to function, taking full advantage of the fact that they will not oppose him or her in any way. In getting his way, in causing fear, he feels powerful, in control, and he believes fearless. The fear, however, does return, for any human being, no matter what his nature, is aware that every act will and does have a consequence. On a cosmic level, the debts need to be paid, and the villain will never be able to get away from the fact that he is telling the victim that they are not okay. Your villain is somebody who takes power from others, who does not respect the boundaries of others in a relationship, and who creates pain in others in order to avoid his own pain. I have been in recent consultations with a family where a young son was lost to a drug overdose. When I met with the mother, she said to me that she wished she had more time with the son, that she could just spend time with him, could love him once more, and that she could tell him that the earring he wears, which she despised so, really does not matter, that his baggy pants, although it does not make him look as good as she believed he could, is no longer important. Her pain was obvious, and she was very much a victim in her sense of pain. During the consultation, her daughter arrived and was introduced to me, and within a matter of minutes, the mother criticized the daughter twice. First about the shoes she was wearing, and then about the way in which she did her makeup. In a moment of cold and absolute truth, the daughter in anger turned on the mother and said to her that she was under a misconception if she believed she lost her son to drugs. You lost him long ago to criticism, she said. I don't know whether the mother, who in that moment was in absolute victim mode, even heard the truth of what her daughter was saying, or whether she realized at that point that she was doing to her daughter what she had said a half an hour previously she would never do to her son did she have the opportunity to speak to him again. We go between victim, villain, and caretaker all the time. The caretaker or the rescuer is the person who has made a different choice. He is the one who would like to believe that he has chosen to stand up for him or herself, but is unable to empower the victim to do the same. The rescuer or the caretaker sees the shortfalls in the victim which he or she knows is a part of their character and tries to change it in the victim, therefore taking responsibility for the victim's behavior but not his own. The rescuer feels and believes that he is in a better position and has to therefore take care of the villain. It is important for the rescuer to keep the victim in victim mode, for in doing so, they will always have a purpose to fulfill, which would give them a sense of purpose and of feeling needed. He or she needs the validation from others, not believing that they are good enough, and therefore needing acceptance and gratitude from the world and from those around them. The caretaker is forever fixing pain, ignoring his or her own needs, and suffers always from the disease to please. Very often we find these people to be controlling and taking power away from others by doing for them what they believe they cannot do themselves. Your rescuer is a person who always fears rejection, and again does not have, similar to the villain, concept of boundaries. They always portray their actions as being for the good of the victim. Anger with these people are often expressed in a passive way, but very aggressive. They allow themselves to be used and will very often complain about how the victim uses them, therefore in their own minds becoming the victim to the victim, who is now becoming the villain or the perpetrator. Everything in this triangle deals with power, either power over the person or power under the person. I'm under the influence of the perpetrator, but the rescuer has power over the victim. The victim feels totally powerless, blaming everyone and everything but himself for his position and circumstances. He will never accept any responsibility for his actions, let alone his circumstances. In being a victim, he gets attention and energy from the villain and the rescuers, dictating to a large extent their behavior without looking at the fact that he does exactly this to himself. Considering his position within the triangle, the victim is the most powerful, as he is required in order for the villain to have someone to beat up on, and without someone in distress, the rescuer has no purpose. The victim, in relaying the situation, becomes the villain in another story, not realizing that he is the villain in terms of his own spiritual role, his essence or higher self being the victim, looking to God for rescuing. What we need to understand, and every person in this triangle, is that God needs nothing, no validation, no purpose, and no ego. It is for this reason that religion as we know it is being questioned. For when the victim takes responsibility, the villain, be it the husband, the wife, the lover, the parents, or the child, is simply left to act out their own nature, irrespective of what may be, and all the energies basing their power on the fear and need for protection and recognition, such as organized religions, governments, and, on a smaller scale, insurance companies, the armed forces, and the medical fraternity lose their power, fighting for survival from within their own essence. We see this happening in our own relationships. The moment we come to the realization that nobody can make us happy, and that happiness resides inside of us, the need that we have for other people in our lives change. We then start looking at the other parties in the relationship as somebody who could reflect our nature, our being, and who we are. In spite of what we may believe, we do not enter into relationships because of another person. Every situation, every contract, and every relationship is entered into because of our own needs and our own lessons. More often than not, it is believed that we attract opposites. This is very often true, and if so, it is especially true that we are attracting someone into our lives who are to show us the areas of lack in our own personalities and lives. They are the ones who come to us to show us what we need more of. Looking again at the victim triangle, we find the villain, the victim, and the rescuer. Let us look again at this, using as a point of departure the universal law that everything and everyone that happens to us reflect an aspect of ourselves. These roles, it must be noted, exists purely in the mind of the victim and has no bearing whatsoever on the person playing the role. Upon entering a relationship where it is necessary to change a specific state of being by becoming stronger, a villain will step forward to challenge the lack of strength within you. What you will see is that person's issue reflected within you, but through the lens of the coping mechanism which he or she has chosen. The villain, therefore, may also experience the pain related to the fear of rejection, but he denies this, hiding it behind a facade of arrogance, aggression, or lack of commitment. As the victim, feeling the pain related to a fear of rejection, you will take energy, no matter how destructive, in order to feel loved and accepted. In accepting this negative energy, the psyche becomes taxed, for it now has to compromise in many ways in order to make up for the sacrifice, making you victim to even more issues, not only within the relationship, but also within your mind. The villain, seeing this, becomes angry at the aspects of himself which he sees reflected, feeling victimized within, and again, but now more intensely, lashes out in a sense of powerless anger, which strengthens his position as villain. Standing by at the top right-hand corner of the victim triangle is the rescuer or the caretaker. This person is content in the illusion that all is well in his or her world, totally denying the powerlessness reflected to them by elevating themselves to the position of rescuer or caretaker. The prevailing belief here is that by changing the behavior of the victim, they need not face it within themselves. The victim feels validated, accepted, and loved, and chooses to stay in the victim role, lapping up the attention and certainly not intending to change. Start role change. The rescuer now becomes the victim to the victim, who becomes perpetrator by virtue of not living up to the rescuer's expectations. This triangle is kept active and alive as a result of conditional love. The need for outside validation is a reflection of self. For instance, the parent who needs the child to perform at school, at work, and in relationships, validating them as good or successful parents. The employer who needs his staff to perform, not because they enjoy what they are doing, but because he is supposedly a good boss. The relationship which works, not because two people are happy, but because one is a victim, having to sacrifice to make it work, therefore being portrayed as the perfect partner. In all of the above scenarios, the life challenges or lessons of all parties are being denied by the other. Although we should all be taking care not to hurt others unduly, we need to take responsibilities for our lives and realize that no one can or will make us happy unless we come to realize that happiness resides within. Our children do not belong to us, and they will not necessarily make us happy, for their lessons may be very different from the curriculum which we have in mind for them. Our partners have their own lessons and have drawn us into their lives for this purpose. If we truly love those whom we believe we do, we need to take responsibility for our own lives and ourselves, making ourselves unconditional, loving mirrors, knowing that only by truly loving ourselves can we forgive ourselves, and only by truly loving and forgiving ourselves can we unconditionally love and forgive others. It is in doing this that we can resolve relationships, release restricting habits, and set both ourselves and others free to enjoy the happiness within. The question, however, is, how do we find the happiness within? How do we come to terms with the knowledge that we are responsible only for our own lives? We do this by forgiving ourselves. The process is a long one and sometimes a slow one, for we need to look at all the people whom we believe needs our forgiveness. And contrary to what we believe, it is the people whom we have expectations of that we need to forgive, not the ones who we believe have been the villains in our lives. When we think of forgiving, we all automatically think of forgiving somebody who has done something wrong. What we need to do is forgive those who have not done what we wanted them to be, challenging us to stand up and do for ourselves. It is a fallacy that forgiving is forgetting. Nobody is asking you to forget. But if you can understand that whatever the other person in the relationship is doing, he or she is doing because it is their life lesson and not anything directed at you, then and only then can you forgive from the heart. And when you forgive, you take back your power. For as long as you blame, no matter what you blame anybody for, you give others power over your emotions. The other person may not be true to you in your relationship. The other person may not be able to commit. The other person may not love as much as you do. Whatever the other person is doing is being done from within the frame of reference with which they have grown up and from within the belief systems which form a part of their being. None of this is done with an intent to hurt you. And when we can understand this, only then can we step out of the victim triangle. Only then can we understand that we are solely responsible for how we will react to another person. Because that is what relationships are all about. The other person is being who he or she came into this world to be. We have contracted them to show us the aspects of ourselves which we need to refine, which we may need to strengthen or need to let go of. Accepting this accepting the concept of mirroring and the knowledge that any person or situation which evokes a negative response within you comes to you with a lesson in its hands is not only difficult, but probably the most powerful and the most empowering acknowledgement that you can make, not only in your life, but also in your relationship. For when you do this, you can honor the person who shares your life for entering into the contract to be what you need in order to learn. Having looked at the other person, having looked at the situations that you need to forgive others for, the most difficult thing that you will probably be required to do is to forgive yourself. Write down now on a piece of paper all the people who need to be forgiven by you. Having done that, write down why you should forgive yourself in that circumstance. Should you maybe forgive yourself for feeling like a victim, for acting like a victim, for emotionally manipulating the situation? You may need to forgive yourself for feeling powerless. Or on a totally superficial level, you may need to forgive yourself for things which you have said or done. Understand and know that it is not for us to hurt other people, for that is not our purpose. But by the same token, we cannot take responsibility for the way in which another person will react to us and to our choices. Know also that when you forgive another person for being who they are, that they may not accept your forgiveness. They may choose to react differently to the offering of peace which you bring to them. Accept and understand that you may and can only take responsibility for that which you do. You cannot take responsibility for how they react. This does not mean that any behavior from another person is acceptable. Whenever you feel violated within a relationship, you should be very clear about this. One of the easiest ways to step out of the victim triangle is to start by developing healthier patterns. This can only happen when you acknowledge that you are stronger than the villain, the rescuer, or the position of victim. And only then can you start acting in a way which will eventually strengthen this position and this belief for you. Start immediately by stating clearly and honestly the truth of what you think and feel. Because without truth, there is no trust. And without trust, there is no relationship. And if you do not operate within your own truth, not you or anybody else can operate within trust. Make your needs known. It is so often expected that a partner in a relationship should know what will make you happy. How can anybody know what will make you happy if you do not yourself? There is no person, and I repeat this, there is no person, no situation which can make you happy unless you choose to be so. Decide what you need. Understand what the consequences will be when these needs are met. And when you have done so, make them known in clear and concise terminology, communication. Be open at all times. Avoid judgment. It is so easy to judge others. The minute you step into a situation of judgment, where another person is too much, too little, too strong, or not good enough, know that you are reflecting a judgment of yourself, and take responsibility. Take responsibility for it, and seek first to change this within yourself. Take care not to fall into the trap of becoming a rescuer or a caretaker. Ideally, become a caregiver, somebody who is available, who gives freely of his time, his energy, but who does so with detachment and with absolutely no expectations of any outcomes. If you cannot do this, if you are absolutely invested in an outcome, know that you are not in a caregiving position, but in a caretaking position. And stop. If at any point in time in your relationship you feel that behavior of your partner is not acceptable, if you feel hurt, if you recognize within yourself any negative emotion as a result of a partner's action, give feedback. Give it clearly, give it concisely, and give it immediately. How often do we not just let it build up and build up? And then, when confrontation takes place, the other person is often stunned by the bitterness and the hurt, which has grown. The interest accumulates. Do not allow this to happen. Be prepared to take responsibility for your actions. Live in absolute honesty and integrity every moment, knowing and accepting that you would stand by your decisions and your actions or your words, even if what was said or done was published. For only if you do this, can you truly say that you are being truthful in any relationship in which you are. One of the most important attributes of a partner in a relationship, which is a mutually happy relationship, is that of a listener. Learn to become a listener. Learn to not only listen to the words of your partner, but to listen and hear what they are saying to you through their actions, through their behavior. For very often, that which is really important is never expressed in words. And yet it speaks so loudly to us. It is very difficult for someone to respect your boundaries if you have none. Decide what your boundaries are, and if you do not have any, decide what you would feel comfortable with, what they should be. And when you have done this, communicate them clearly to your partner. Everyone is entitled to boundaries, for it is your personal space within which you need to heal and love who you are. Make sure, however, that your boundaries are based on your personal values. For it is only if they are based in personal values and in the beliefs which you truly hold about yourself that you will uphold these boundaries, that you will believe and honor them, and that others will be inspired to do the same. Love yourself and live this. Live it in truth and in honesty. The only real way to be a loving, nurturing, and caring partner is to look at yourself in absolute honesty. Be truthful to yourself at all times about what it is you want from your partner and what it is you give. And in both instances, what is your intent? Is it to give and to love unconditionally? Or do you expect something in return? Forgive yourself. Forgive yourself for everything which you believe you have done wrong, both to your partner maybe, and to yourself. And then learn to detach. Learn to know when a partner is attacking you as a person, or when that person is dealing with his or her own anger, sadness, grief, or feelings of fear or disillusionment. Most often, it is true that the other person feels sad or powerless, and then projects this onto you. Learn to know when it is time to detach and to step away from the drama, rather than to become embroiled in it. Avoid negative influences. If you are in a relationship where certain friends do not work and you know that this causes unhappiness, where certain habits which you are not happy with creates unhappiness within your relationship, honestly look at this behavior. Look at the situation. Forgive yourself. And yes, take responsibility. Take responsibility and start changing the behavior which is destroying not your relationship, but yourself. Because whatever is happening in your relationship is purely a mirror of what is happening within you. Seek to love yourself unconditionally. Seek to love yourself by nurturing yourself, by doing for yourself that which makes you happy. For only if you are a fulfilled and happy person within yourself will you have pure unconditional love to give to the person who shares your life. Do this now. For if God can love you unconditionally, who are you not to?